I'm hearing right now that St. Johns County, they're having a presser. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it should be obvious to everyone that we are beginning to feel the impacts of Hurricane Irma. We're seeing elevated and sustained winds, heavy rain, coastal erosion, and flooding in some portions of the county. We're also seeing some electrical outages throughout the county as the storm approaches. I think it's important for our residents to understand this is not going to be a quick storm. This is going to be an event of an extended duration. Hurricane force winds or winds in the maximum that we will experience are going to begin this evening around 7 p.m. and run through as long perhaps as 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. So this is going to be an extended storm. I want to reassure the community that we are well prepared to deal with the impacts of Hurricane Irma. Our federal, our state, and our local officials are all working together, implementing the emergency management plans that they've rehearsed, they've practiced on for years, and they're well equipped, well trained, and experienced to deal with this type of an event. It's also reassuring to see that the community as a whole is taking this storm seriously. I've seen more precautions in the community and a better community-wide response than we experienced with Hurricane Matthew. At this time, we're asking everyone to shelter in place, okay? Our roads are not safe to traverse at this time. I know Sheriff Shore will elaborate on that in a few minutes, but we want to reemphasize that people should begin to hunker down in place. All our bridges are currently open. The Bridge Alliance was temporarily closed this afternoon, but that was due to tidal conditions. It's my understanding that it's back open along with our other bridges, but they are subject to closure as weather conditions dictate. Water and sewer system will remain operational as long as we can possibly keep it on. But remember that after the storm, we may issue boiled water notices. So check our website and our hotline for the portion of the county that you live in to make sure that you're not under a boiled water notice. If we close the bridges, it's going to take a period of time for the Florida Department of Transportation to inspect the approaches and inspect the bridges to determine that they are safe to traverse. That is not going to be a quick process. We're asking people not to go to the foot of the bridges, but instead monitor local media and our webpage for conditions, and we will let you know when those bridges are open and safe to traverse. As many of you know, it's no longer necessary to show a beach access tag to get back onto the beaches. However, you may be asked for identification that you're a resident of the beaches to gain access. Again, please pay attention to our website and local media for reentry information. Our main goal is to keep everyone safe. That's first and foremost. Inconvenience is second, okay? All county, municipal, and school board officers will now be closed through Tuesday. And after the storm passes, we're asking people to be patient. And I can't emphasize that message strong enough. Given the size and the magnitude of this storm, coupled with what played out in Houston, federal, state, and local resources are limited. This is not going to be a quick recovery in all likelihood. So our residents need to be patient. We'll bring those utilities and those services back online as quickly as possible. But it will, in all likelihood, take longer to reestablish day-to-day services. So if we work together, if we cooperate with one another, we're very confident we'll get this storm and we'll get back to normal as quickly as possible. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Sheriff Shore, who will elaborate on some of the conditions in the field and also some of the law enforcement dimensions of this storm. Sheriff?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lonchek. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and here we are again. I do want to bring up, before I get into some of the law enforcement issues, a deputy sheriff in Hardee County, Florida, and a employee of the Department of Corrections were killed this morning in a storm-related crash. And I bring that up for a couple of reasons. And one, of course, is to remind our citizens and our government and public safety workers that Now's the time. We've got to be careful. We've got to maintain situational awareness. Accidents happen under the best of conditions, and we're not operating under the best of conditions. So, and we've had some issues with some citizens already with some accidents, and we need to be very, very careful. You've probably already noticed in St. Johns County, the law enforcement, the fire rescue presence out there is at its maximum and will remain that way until such time that we think we can start drawing down. Our government workers, our utility folks, our bridge folks, our road and bridge folks are out there. All the municipalities, everybody's engaged, and it's showtime for all of us. I do want to mention a couple of things. We've got a lot of some traffic in St. Johns County of people that are driving around sightseeing, and I could understand that this morning. But now's not the time. Not only is it dangerous, but you're going to get in the way of public safety. You're going to get in the way of essential services. People do not need to be driving down to see how big the waves are. Now's not the time, especially during the next 24 to 36 hours. So I want to urge all of our citizens, as Mr. Wanchek said, seek shelter, stay there. We're just beginning this. A lot of what we're seeing right now is still that northeaster we've been dealing with. And I've gotten reports in on our intercoastal that are a little bit troubling to me. I think between that nor'easter and this storm, we're going to have some challenges there. So people need to be smart and don't take anything for granted. The bridge closing issue, I will tell you we are monitoring the wind speeds on these bridges every 15 minutes, and we're doing that to keep them open as long as we possibly can for our citizens. Again, I would highly anticipate within the next 8 hours to 12 hours, those bridges are going to get shut down. And we've already talked about that. I also wanted to bring up, too, you know, in Matthew, the western part of our county kind of got a break. Well, the western part of our county this time is going to be the closest to that hurricane. So we need to be situationally aware completely across the county, St. Johns River area. We are paying special attention, of course, to the A1A area up in the Volano area that got undermined during the last storm. We're also paying attention, of course, to State Road 13, where we had a lot of trees down last time, and we'll be responding to all of those. Also, we have a curfew that goes into effect tonight at 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. And we're not out to arrest people. What we're trying to do is make sure people stay safe. So we're going to make people need to stay on their property or in their homes, shelter in place, take care of their families, and it's really too late now to evacuate. We've got a lot of people that have evacuated St. Johns County that are now trying to come back to St. Johns County because of the West Coast. So, and we're dealing with these things. So patience is a virtue. This is what government does, and we do it very well. And we're going to be out there, law enforcement, fire rescue. We're gonna take the risks that are needed to protect our citizens and everybody here. So without further ado, Mr. Wanchek, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Any of us will be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Sir, what is the status of shelters right now? Are you guys at capacity? Can you still accept people?
We can still accept people. Even our special needs shelters have room. Except Pedro Menendez.
I have a question for the sheriff. You mentioned getting some troubling reports between the nor'easter and what we're getting with Irma.
Well, we've got our sheriff's office. All of us know a lot of people in the community. We're getting a lot of feedback, and we're putting that through the EOC. I've had calls from 3 or 4 folks that I know that live on or close to the intercoastal on the Barrier Island, and from them, the surge is more than. And these are people that have lived here for 40 years, so. And they're telling me that they're very concerned about the surge that they're starting to see in the intercoastal. Now, we're not trying to panic people, but this is coming from our citizens who are out there looking at it. And so, you know, we kind of like last year. When Matthew came, we had a nor'easter at that time. We've got high tides and all of these other things. But I'll tell you this, I was on the phone, we were on the phone this morning with Monroe County and a couple of these other counties, and folks, they don't know what they're dealing with right now. So we just we don't want people to let their guard down on what we're getting ready to deal with in St. Johns County. We've said it for the last 3 days. I'll say it again. plan for the worst case scenario and work down from there. It's very hard to ramp up. It's easy to ramp down. So be safe. Don't take things for granted. Don't run out to, well, there's no stores open, but don't run out to go see what's happening at the pier. Now's not the time.
Sheriff, can you speak a little bit on the people, the families you say who have evacuated to the west and are calling you
Yes.
from the office to come back home?
Right. Well, the problem is a lot of people that we know too that have went over to the west. A lot of them went to Tallahassee. I've had calls from people from Tallahassee saying, "What should we do? Shelter in place," because they're looking at this storm, and we're telling the folks that we're getting calls from, "Hey, we're going to come back to St. John." No, don't come back. Shelter in place. It's too dangerous. The roads are too dangerous right now. So that's the message that we're putting out to people. Now's not the time to travel. Now's not the time to sightsee. Now's the time to seek shelter. You know, the other thing about this that everybody forgets is tornado warnings have been up all over the state. They've been under, I talked to the sheriff in Palm Beach County earlier. They had like, I don't even know how many they haven't any touchdowns, but that's unpredictable. As, of course, the hurricane is too. So now's not the time for people to be making major moves. Shelter in place, protect what you have, and we're there for people. The National Guard is out in force. Every part of government is 100% stood up right now, and this is what we do, and we do it very well. So, any other questions?
What about reports of people going and making sandbags with the beach, with the sand that's on the beach?
What about it?
We're hearing reports of people going to St. Augustine Beach, making sandbags with that sand. My understanding is that's illegal. Can you speak on that?
Well, I don't know if it's illegal or not, but we're not going to arrest anybody for filling sandbags up from the beach. I mean, it's just, you know, it's one of these things that people have to do to protect what they have. Chief Harvey?
Sheriff, I have some clarification on that.
Go ahead. Come on up.
We had a few calls, very minimal calls, where individuals were actually, we had created berms with sand, or beach quality sand, and it was at the end of Ocean Trace Road,
Oh, yeah.
at the end of A Street, and at the end of Pope Road parking lot. There were individuals yesterday that were actually backing up with small pickup trucks and filling it up for their personal use, and we understand. But these berms were put in place for the reason to stop the ocean and stop that surge, which was the problem we had during Matthew. So very isolated incidents again, and we just are not saying take this sand. This sand is used for a purpose.
Thank you, Chief. And you know, our goal is not to. We're not out here to arrest people. I mean, we're out here to help people, and that's what we do. And unfortunately, we've had to arrest a few people today, but these things do happen during these storms. So we're out there, even with the curfew, we're out there to assist people. These decisions that we make on bridge closings and curfews and these things that the chief alluded to, is to protect the greater good. It's the greater numbers. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're not going to stop sightseers and write them tickets, but we're just trying to get the cooperation. I got to tell you, 98% of St. Johns County's got it. I mean, or higher. They're doing it. The citizens are out there helping each other. We've had a lot of calls in from citizens wanting to volunteer, and that we know, and that day may come, but that's it.
Sheriff, what were the reasons for the arrest today?
Well, I think we had a domestic violence arrest. We did have to make a couple of arrests at our shelters on some issues that came up. I think one was a physical altercation. And some other things. You know, these are people, they're at their worst. I mean, they truly are, and that's why our level of tolerance goes up, because people are vulnerable, they're away from home, they're uncertain about what's going to happen. But again, we're not going to let them go into a shelter and wreak havoc and cause problems. So, you know, again, arrests are last resorts, especially in a situation like this. We're out there to help, we're out there to assist, but we're also not going to let, you know, one or two people create havoc out there.
Sheriff,
So
have the issues at the shelters been widespread, or is it?
no, isolated. Just that we had one isolated incident at one shelter and one isolated incident at another shelter. So, and that's happening all over the state. As you can, we got some of these counties have 25,000 people in shelters. I mean, think about that. That's a bigger than most municipalities. So, it's a challenge. We're doing it great. The school board has done a yeoman's job. Superintendent Forson and his staff have done a yeoman's job. I just left a couple of the shelters, and let me tell you, you talk about some folks being fully engaged, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Weather-related question, if I may. With the flooding and the storm surge that's been happening with the nor'easter, and now as Irma starts kicking up here in our area, how much of a concern is it to already have that water there as Irma starts getting closer to us?
Obviously, it's very much a concern, and as much as we'd all like to run models and make predictions, no one knows for certain, and that's why, as the sheriff says, we're assuming the worst case scenario. We'll apologize on the back end if we've done something that we didn't need to do, but right now, protecting people's health, safety, and welfare is paramount. That's our sole mission right now, and we're directed and engaged on that. Sure do.
Good, sir. Also, back to the shelter issue, we do have law enforcement presence, strong law enforcement presence at all of our shelters. And as of right now, we also have National Guard presence at all of our shelters. Now, I suspect the Guard's going to get called away in the coming days, but we're there and we're not leaving. We're 24/7 at these shelters just to facilitate and to help our school resource folks and our school board folks. So things are going good. The shelters are operating wonderfully. I didn't mean to give that impression, but sometimes the impression that they're not, but sometimes we've got to take folks that aren't behaving correctly and get them away from the population. But so far, so good. Thank you so much.
Sheriff, one other question. Will you guys
To the St. Johns County Emergency Operations Center officials there, hearing from Sheriff Shore. The message St. Johns County is getting out to residents right now is, at this time, they're urging you to shelter in place, saying that right now it is simply not safe to be out driving on the roadways. They've seen a lot of people out sightseeing, heading down to the beaches to look at maybe the big waves, and they say not safe. You need to be hunkered down in your safe spot from here on out.